Welcome to the Orange County Forum, where newsmakers keep you informed about local, national, and global issues that impact Orange County today.
I'd like to welcome to the stage our chairman of the Republican Party, the Honorable Jim Brulte. Please, Jim, if you join us at the stage. Also, our California State Treasurer, the Honorable Bill Lockyer. Our referee and moderator will be Mr. Joseph Perkins from the Orange County Register editorial pages. Please welcome Mr. Perkins.
I am flanked by two of the most distinguished public servants, in my estimation, that this great state has had in at least the past quarter century. I have actually voted for both of these gentlemen at some point or another. I'm not going to say in what races. But obviously the tenor in Sacramento has changed in the past, at least since the start of this millennium. And we wanted to hear firsthand from these two gentlemen who can provide some perspective on where we've been and where we are going. And so with that, I'm going to open up with a question, and maybe you can start on this, Jim. We are now in a state where we have a Democratic governor, Jerry Brown, where both the Assembly and the state Senate have Democratic supermajorities, and where every statewide...
Well, not technically, but what? That's all right.
Did you want to... You can elaborate on that, Jim.
Big majorities.
Big majorities. Where every statewide office is currently occupied by a Democrat. Jim, is there any reason to believe that that will change this upcoming November?
Yeah, the answer is yes. Although let me start out by saying that when I was recruited to run for Republican Party chair, because I assure you it wasn't my idea. I promised to do two things. I promised to always speak the truth about the circumstance of the party. I also promised not to ever discuss policy. I would leave that to policymakers. But let me just amplify on the points you made. You have to go back to 1882 to find Democrats winning every statewide office in a gubernatorial election. 1882. However, they've done it twice in the last three statewide gubernatorial elections. You have to go back to the 1800s to find Democrat supermajorities in both houses of the legislature at the same time. And quite frankly, if you look at it objectively, the Republican Party in this state has been in decline for at least 2.5 decades. At least. So the task for the Republicans is much more Herculean. When I ran for party chair, I said I would focus on three things. One, helping Republicans maintain the majority in the U.S. House of Representatives, and I think we can do that. Two, help eliminate the Democratic supermajorities in the state assembly, because I didn't see a path in the Senate. And rebuild the party from the ground up, focusing on water districts, school districts, city councils, mayor, county supervisors. We had an opportunity in the summer of last year to pick up a Senate seat. A very nice, bright, wonderful Democrat from the Central Valley left the state Senate to take a job with the private sector. It was a plus 21% Democrat seat in the Central Valley, and we elected a Republican to fill that. So now we actually have a pathway to eliminate the supermajority in the Senate as well as the Assembly. I think it's quite possible that we will eliminate the supermajority in both houses of the state legislature. We know we're going to be outgunned will be out-financed. But I actually think we have better candidates, and we will work harder, and hopefully we'll work smarter. So, yeah, I think we can eliminate the Democratic supermajorities. We will also pay close attention to see if there are opportunities to win statewide. And, you know, part of politics is taking advantage of a changing circumstance. And so we're going to keep our eyes on those, and if opportunities avail, we will try to capitalize on them.
Okay. Mr. Treasurer.
First, let me just acknowledge a long and significant friendship with Dick Brulte. Pardon me, I'm looking at Dick Ackerman, who I also wanted to acknowledge. So Dick Ackerman.
Well, he was using that as an adjective rather than, but when you're as close as
Actually,
Bill and I are.
It's okay. But Dick Ackerman, who was the minority leader also while I was there, and Jim, who was the minority leader also, and we're all friends and tried to do some problem solving together. No, I didn't mean to call you a...
Well, that's all right.
Okay.
That's what, I hear it every day.
Yeah, I know. So statewide, you know, I'm optimistic, and among the ways I think about these things, other than, you know, the nature or the qualities of the candidate, which I think in analytics, it's what we often miss, and very frequently the person who can really do the job best is the one that has an edge in a campaign, and whether they're resourced and where's the tide that particular year. And certainly the national tides seem to be flowing in Republican directions in this midterm environment for a second-term president. So there's that. But for California uniquely, it is demographics is destiny, and we split 40% each of the white voters in California are Democrats and Republicans, but then when you look at Latinos, when it's, you know, winds up being 15% to 55%, or African Americans 4% to 75%, you just look at the demographics of the state and how the trends are, and absent some extraordinary circumstance, you know, like an Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think the odds are greatly toward Democrats maintaining the statewide offices. Now, Jim's right when he talks about some specific districts here and there where there may be a change, and I think that's certainly possible.
Mr. Chairman, of course, the tide, on a national level at least, appears to be going the way of the GOP.
Sure.
And the question is whether there might be, if not quite the same kind of tide, but at least a tide here in California, with Republicans perhaps doing better than many expect this upcoming fall.
Yeah, look, campaigns don't take place in a vacuum. You know, I always like to say one of my best friends owns a bunch of car dealerships, but you know, when interest rates are 18%, he doesn't sell as many cars as he does when interest rates are a little lower. And there's a cycle to elections. You know, one of the things Bill and I first of all, Bill Lockyer is one of the brightest people. Forget politics, just in terms of well-rounded subject area. He's one of the brightest people I've ever met, which is why I enjoy spending so much time with him. I learn quite a lot. But let me talk a little bit about the tide. And I'll go back to 12 and then come to 14, because it's important, I think, to understand environments. You know, a lot of my Republican friends were saying, oh, look, Mitt Romney is going to be elected president. We're going to beat Barack Obama. And, you know, when you care passionately about something, and by the way, most Republicans care passionately about their beliefs, and most Democrats care passionately about their beliefs. And the key is to try to be dispassionate and analyze objectively. In over 100 years, we have not denied a president re-election unless he had a primary or a third party or both. Barack Obama didn't have a primary, he did not have a third party. So he did not fit the pattern of a president who was denied re-election. You know, not having a primary allowed him to spend $500 million building an organization, all the while my party was going through 23 different debates moderated by liberal commentators, most of whom despise us and hate our belief system and ask questions designed not to illuminate but to embarrass. So I never bought into the inevitability of us beating Barack Obama. In fact, when I looked at the redistricting in 2012, I actually told the Los Angeles Times that in my mind there was no way the Republicans could not prevent Democrats from getting a supermajority. It was going to be a great year for Democrats. I didn't like the lines. My mistake was allowing myself to be overheard by an LA Times reporter because my Republican friends didn't like reading it in the paper, but it proved to be true. That was the cycle of 12. So now we're moving into 14. So to understand what the historic norm is, you go back and determine what kind of an election is, and then you look backwards and try to identify trends within certain elections. The 2014 election is the second midterm in Barack Obama's presidency. With one exception, with only one exception, going back to Franklin Roosevelt, the party in the White House has lost seats in the House of Representatives in every second midterm election, period. So that suggests something else. When you look at state legislative seats, because our number 2 goal is helping eliminate the supermajorities, there are 7,383 state legislative seats in the country. 7,383. Republicans, by the way, hold a majority of those in both the upper and the lower house. Not sure about Nebraska, which is unicameral. With the exception of George W. Bush in 2002, where Republicans actually picked up seats in the in state legislatures in a midterm election. You have to go all the way back to Franklin Roosevelt to find the party in the White House picking up legislative seats in midterm elections. In fact, in the 2010 midterm, Democrats lost over 650. So the environment should be really good for us. That said, we understand the other side will have overwhelming resources. No matter who the Republican nominee is for governor, they're probably going to come out broke. Last time I checked, I don't spend a lot of time checking his reports, but I do read the LA Times on a daily basis. You know, the incumbent has about 20 million.
I read the Orange County Register.
Oh, well, that's...
You get our endorsement.
Sorry for a cheap shot.
The Orange County Register doesn't deliver to my neighborhood.
They will.
Not yet.
So the environment should be good for us. The question is, can we capitalize on it? And can we be dispassionate in the application of our resources? And I think we can. I go all over the state telling Republicans, I have no desire to help anybody get 66% of the vote when they're going to win with 62 without our help. I have no desire to help anyone get 41% and lose when they're going to get 38% and lose without our help. We have to be taking all of our resources and put them where we can get candidates from 48 to 51. And by the way, in this county, there are 2 seats that are going to be ground zero. One is Lou Correa's new seat, where we believe Janet Wynn will run against Jose Solario. And the other is Sharon Quirk Silva's seat, where we believe Young Kim will run against Sharon Quirk Silva. They're the only 2 running, so we believe that to be the case. But you know, you never, you know, people die. So I don't want to make a Sherman-esque statement, but Those will be ground zero, and it'll be fun campaigns, and they're all very good candidates, and they'll all be adequately funded. And so there's going to be a war here that the Orange County Register can cover probably better than the LA Times.
Good makeup there, Jim.
You know, I share Jim's sort of general analysis with respect to national title trends and likely outcomes, and some of those results nationally were uniquely impacted by controlling redistricting in state legislatures around the country, which Republicans tended to do. But still, that's I think the best prediction to make nationally. I think it's a little different with respect to California and what's happening here, but I can't avoid at least agreeing that the two critical races, the two most critical races that'll be well-financed on both sides, you know, are Solario and Quirk Silva and those contests. And with respect to that, you know, Orange County, I would say two things. Orange County has been blessed, unlike some other parts of the state, to have not had personal scandals touch legislative delegations for many, many years. I think there's questions about personal integrity that are going to be important for people in Orange County to think about with respect to the next round. But separate from that, it's unwise as a general matter, in the same way that I think probably Jim and I share the view that robust bipartisan government is best for the voters, best for the taxpayers, best for the state or country, when they really engage and can work problem-solving solutions together. For any county to send all one brand to Sacramento is not a smart thing to do. So all we have, of course, here are Quirk Silva and Correa. If those shift next time, and they might, my recommendation to voters would be they've made a mistake in not having someone in each caucus in Sacramento that can represent Orange County needs.
Well, to that point, Mr. Treasurer, you know, the past at least 15 years have seen kind of a decline in civility. We've seen it in Washington, but we also see it in Sacramento. Why is it that Republicans and Democrats in the state capitol can't set aside differences for the greater good? Now, we did see that with the vote last week on the rainy day fund.
Yeah.
Is that an aberration, or is that something that we might see more of going down the road?
You know, I don't know. I think it probably is an aberration, but I'm hopeful that there'll be, that it won't be. But your larger question you ask is about civility generally. It may have infected the society in a much broader way than just politics, that there's just less uncivil behavior, whether it's reporting or on the freeway or wherever you want to talk about. Certainly the trend that Jim talks about a lot of moderates being dissatisfied with the pollers in their Republican or Democratic Party and maybe shifting to be declined to states or independents, that what's left are people that philosophically find it harder to agree. That doesn't mean they have to have that sort of personal animus that seems to infect the conversation, and term limits have made a difference. When they're not there very long, they don't know each other, they don't figure out how to work and trust each other, and maybe more subtle but more significant is newly electeds kind of come with an attitude. And it's like, you folks messed everything up, I know what's right, I'm gonna go fix it. And it's pretty common among the first, and they get there and they find, you know, there's a lot of smart people here from both parties. And it takes the edge off, and especially then in the legislature, which is the place, it's the social glue. the legislature represents every part of our society, women and men, and racial and economic diversity, and geographies, and business, and different businesses, and so on. When they work right, it's the accommodating force in a society that's very diverse. You get there after a while and realize there's a need for people who can work together, that aren't just advocates, but they're mediators, but we don't go to Sacramento with mediative skills in most instances. You learn them by working at it, and they don't have enough time to work together at it. Now, maybe the new 12-year terms are going to make a difference in that respect. They'll have more time at task.
By the way, just on the rainy day fund, I talk with Senator Bob Huff, the Senate Republican leader, almost every day, because when you're the minority, you have to make sure you're coordinating as closely as you can. Prior to the suspension of 3 Democrat senators, the governor never called him. The president pro tem never called him. And he said, it was interesting. Once they were gone and the governor needed Republicans because the rainy day fund required a 2/3 vote, he said, all of a sudden my phone started ringing. So there was a reason that activity occurred, and if the Senate had a full complement of Democrats, my guess is the governor would not have called the Republican leader because he hadn't chosen to do it until he needed to.
Well,
it's not a good or a
Jim,
bad thing.
as you know, when he first got there, he tried really hard to work with the Republicans, and unsuccessfully.
Well, actually, I was a part of that discussion, and yeah, they actually got a deal, and the governor went back, and his staff undid it. But let's not go into that.
I wasn't there for that. So
Yeah, no,
I
I actually was.
Well, let me ask this then, Mr. Chairman. The last round of redistricting, both Democrats and Republicans carved out safe districts for themselves. There are very few competitive races in this state. Why didn't Republicans press harder for more competitive districts?
Remember, this is the independent commission now, so it's not.
Are
done
you
by
talking
the-
about the last round?
Before that, it was
prior
Brulte.
to that. Look, I helped draw the lines before.
Yeah. It was Brulte last time, and Phil Burton the time before.
Sure. I got to stand at a press conference and hear the governor talk about how evil the people were that drew the lines. I helped draw them. And let me.
And that was your governor, by the way.
Absolutely. Trust me, he's used the same adjective you did.
Richard?
But let me walk through that. So people have a sense of this. First of all, before I got to the legislature, I thought it was an inherent conflict of interest for legislators to draw their own districts. When I was in the legislature, I thought it was an inherent conflict of interest for legislators to draw their own districts. And when I left, I still held that view. That said, when I was in the legislature as the leader of my party, I had certain responsibilities. I got a call from a fellow named Karl Rove. You may have heard of him.
He's the doctor.
Now into diagnosing candidates or potential candidates. And he said, Brulte, if you can get 19 safe Republican congressional seats, we can control the House of Representatives for the next decade. The price of getting 19 safe congressional seats for my party was a status quo redistricting that basically locked in Democrat majorities in the Senate and the Assembly. I took a lot of heat from some of my, I'd like to say, uninformed Republican friends who said I sold our party out. But we hadn't controlled the Senate since I was in elementary school, and we controlled the Assembly for 1 year since I was in elementary school. So I actually thought a bird in the hand was better than 2 in the bush. So we did this status quo redistricting deal. One of the criticisms was, we all drew ourselves safe seats. Well, that's not true. I was never running again. I didn't draw a seat for myself, and half the Senate Republicans that voted for that deal did not. We voted for it because we thought maintaining control of the House was better for America than an opportunity to take control of the legislature, which, looking at the demographics that the Attorney General and current Treasurer outlined, worked against us. So we drew this redistricting, which, by the way, held back the full force of those demographic changes. So when the Independent Redistricting Commission 10 years later draws districts, the dam that I kind of helped build had totally given way. Had we had competitive seats back in 2002, we would have gotten to a supermajority sooner rather than later. In this case, it just happened all at once. That said, I can't say this as well as you do, Bill, so maybe you can correct me, but as my friend Bill Lockyer likes to say, we tend to organize in neighborhoods of people who are similar to us. You use different language, but it's really hard to draw really competitive seats in Orange County.
Yep.
It just is.
And LA.
You have a lot of Republicans here. Now, you can make every seat in Orange County competitive, but you have to shoot huge fingers into Los Angeles and create kind of a barbell where in LA you pick up a bunch of Democrats and in Orange County you pick up a bunch of Democrats and you connect them like a barbell. And that's the way it is throughout most of the state. We haven't elected a Republican in Alameda County in a long time.
Give Marguth.
We haven't elected in Santa Clara County. In San Francisco, I remember the good old days when we got 22%. I think we're now down in single digits. Yeah. So if you set out to create competitive seats, you still couldn't create that many competitive seats. We created 12 competitive seats in 2002 when we drew the lines. I think you have 15 now. So the Independent Commission couldn't even create competitive seats. And that's not a function of people drawing the lines, that's a function of people living where people are similar to them.
I agree with Jim's comment in that respect, and would only add my personal view, which is I've always thought it was a conflict for legislators to draw their own lines. Actually authored bills as a legislator to have an independent commission, which of course didn't pass when Willie Brown was Speaker. But that's my view, and I think it's a better way to do it.
Sure. Then that's not disagreeing, since I actually supported the Independent Redistricting Commission.
Maybe I should add, I'm the only Democrat statewide that supported the ballot proposal for an independent commission. I think it's the right way to do it.
Okay, well, you know what? I'd like to, again, thank you very much for our speakers here today. And our referee, thank you very much. You've done a fantastic job. Thank you all for coming. Hope you enjoyed this program.
The Orange County Forum is brought to you through the generous support of the Orange County Register and our sustaining partners. For more information about the Orange County Forum, call 949-588-9884. The Orange County Forum is a nonprofit organization. Your contributions are tax deductible.